In today's episode, we talk with Elysa Fenenbock. Elysa is a professor at Stanford. She's teaching on psychedelic design. We talk all about her personal journey with psychedelics and her crash and how it saved her life.
Yeah, it's a beautiful interview with both her professional experience and her personal experience woven in, and such a strong example of how we can be a messy human and a really phenomenal professional person and creative person and all of this stuff. I'm so thrilled to bring you my friend, and I invite you guys to let us know what you think of this episode, and thanks so much for being here.
Melanie Curtis, Jason Maletsky. Big goals, deep work. Love, fear. Being human. Learning to live in alignment with our values. On the path to our full potential. Trust the journey.
Elysa! I'm so thrilled you are here and with us. I can't wait to just see where today's conversation takes us. Welcome, 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 my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
Yeah.
And excited to have a conversation with you and to get to know Jason as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, well, for those of you listening, Elysa and I, we were fast friends meeting at Hatch this past year. We found ourselves on a walk, and it became pretty much immediately clear, oh, okay, that's why we're on this walk together. Thanks, universe, hooking this up, making us connect, making this happen. So I love that. And I'm actually kind of want to start there. Like, how did you end up at Hatch, which for those of you listening also is a collective of people, thought leaders, creatives, just people doing lots of things to better the world in service of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and all that stuff. So it's a very unique and beautiful community, and I want to know how you found yourself to that community and our walk.
Yeah, thanks. I'm 10 years into Hatch. It was my Hatch anniversary as well as Hatch's anniversary. My first time in Hatch, actually, my art predated me. My art went before I went. So I was collaborating with a handful of folks and had built this large immersive art installation that was looking at helping people express feelings.
Amazing.
And so I created some fiber art, and then we had a photographer, we had a data visualization artist, and so they were really tied to Hatch, which used to have, I think, a lot more of a film and arts core, and that's evolved over time. And so that was how I first sort of like my art made it. And then I came the next year and dove in, and I describe it to people as like the place where as an adult I go to make friends.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure. And that's how I felt on our walk. It was like fast friends. And obviously we immediately sort of at some point, usually in a conversation with me, psychedelics will come up and deeper healing if we're really digging into it. And that's obviously is one of the sort of core tenets of Hatch, is that you really are just very deep right away, heart-centered. That's cultural tone. So we're able to go there quickly. But is this one of your first interviews, kind of starting to talk about the work that you're doing in the psychedelic space? Is that right?
Yeah. Your invitation and create, it's sort of like it's been time, but not time. I mean, and actually our conversation started around this sort of like the privilege of talking about what we're doing, right? And also the risk. And so as a parent, as a professional, it has been, and in the times we're still sitting in, like I'm in California, this is a lot more normal. But even as I like drop my kid at preschool and my kid is talking, he's playing on the phone the other day and he's like, yeah, we're talking about psychedelics and it was good and it was bad. He's just a 4-year-old. Like, it's just putting words together. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what must everyone think? So I have been cautious about being public. And at the same time, I'm teaching this course in psychedelics. So like, in a way, I've already come out of the closet.
Yeah. I commend you, honestly, for stepping into a space like this where you are really throwing your hat over the fence, as it were. I'm obviously, I don't want to hear about your class too. But like it's a thing to make this choice. So I really want to honor that and share my respect of what I know it takes to kind of come out publicly about something that we care about that maybe feels a bit risky to be known for. So I love that. Jason, I want to give you a chance to ask a question.
Yeah, I'm curious about a couple things. I'll say something first of all the framework of kind of a cultural normative of psychedelics today has definitely, the needle is swinging pretty quickly. California is one of the states where there's been decriminalization. So there are places in California where we can, actively engage in a fairly comfortable way, but it's definitely not widespread across the nation yet. So I feel that kind of trepidation of like, what is safe to talk about and what isn't safe to talk about. And I applaud everybody who steps forward to speak about our consciousness and our journeys and it's such a powerful movement that's happening in the world today. So I commend you for joining us and speaking out. First of all, thank you. And I have a question about your art. I want to hear more about it. Tell me what is this? Tell me more about like what was the goal of this piece? What was it trying to say? Tell me more about your art.
Oh, thanks. It's like all of the art has fed into like everything that I've always been about is kind of the same. It just has a different like flavor medium. And that work in particular was really, we were trying to invite people how to like express an emotion through body, which is not something that a lot of folks are, comfortable with. And so it was, it's like, show me anger, show me laughter, show me love. So we had a series of different, like very different kinds of emotions. And then these, like all of these different fabric things, art pieces to play with and get inside and crawl in and pull on and jump with. And so they kind of gave people a prop, like, which was, I think, necessary. If I had just said like, show me happy, like a lot of people are not comfortable in body. And like I was a dancer first. And so this is kind of like, how do you help people start to connect with that? And then this other question about, are there universal norms around what is it like in body? What is anger? Like, were we finding that there were patterns for the way people expressed anger or patterns for the colors they chose?
Interesting. Yeah, I've been a long-time burner, so the immersive and interactive art is a really huge piece of it. And I hear that in what you're talking about is the desire or the challenge of bringing the viewer into the experience to be part of it and embodying it, like somatically feeling how the art feels through them and expresses through them. That's beautiful.
As a burner, you might appreciate. So I also did a bunch of work with, it's called Reimagine, and it's a festival, a nonprofit around reimagining end of life.
Yep.
So I built some installations with them, and one of them was called One Last Thing, and it was a portal, like a physical portal you could go in to, and with this question of like this liminal space, sending and receiving messages from those we've lost. And so people would write messages into and drop them into the portal. And the invitation was then like any message that caught your eye. Maybe that was a message sent back to you.
Wow.
And I had people which is the highest form of compliment. So me describe it as feeling like they were at the temple at the barn, which is just this sort of liminal space. And I think these like interactive pieces are, you know, they play in the psychedelic realm too, or really it's just like these emotional, like creating space for vulnerability, for connection, for healing. And there are different ways in which we can design for that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I want to hear about because that's one of the things that's in your bio is this phrase, creative problem solving. And there's a part of me that's like, what does that look like? You know, like, tell me more what that means for like a like somebody who's not necessarily in that space of creative problem solving around in the way that you do that work. I really want to understand what that term means, because I feel like I want to know how that connects to now what you're doing today with psychedelic design, the School of Psychedelic Design, all of that. So can you help us understand that term?
Yeah, I could try. It's one of the hard things I think with like design and the work that I do is that like until you go through a process, it's really hard to like fully embody or understand what kinds of solutions we mean, because it's so widespread. And so like if we use this art piece as an example, the creative challenge there was designing art for grief, designing an experience, a container to support people who are in grief. And for me at the time, I mean, it was kind of in honor of, in memory of my grandmother and who I was grieving. And it was an answer to like, well, one last thing I want to tell you, one last thing I want to hear from you. And so there's a whole creative process around like, okay, how do we create a container? What does a container feel like? What kind of interaction? Like, how do I design for an interaction that feels like I, as somebody who walks up to an experience, know how to interact with that? So like the problem there was, how do you design art, create art for grief?
Yeah.
And so that went through like a full artistic process. But I would also say, as an example, of how complex like some of the creative problems we're solving are, my students last year, we partnered with a nonprofit called Ancestral Heart, and they are looking at reciprocity. And so in the space of psychedelics, and working with Indigenous peoples, there's this question around reciprocity. Like, how do we learn from, but also give back to? Like, how do we not move in just an extractive way? Like, give me your medicine, give me your wisdom, and I'll pay you money. Like, maybe if you're lucky, but even that isn't like real reciprocity. It's not a real exchange. And that's a really hard problem. And so students, that was the creative, design challenge, is like, how do we design for reciprocity? What could that look like? And so they were starting to design solutions around like different forms of exchange and relationship and community building. And so creative problem solving is like,
that's a perfect example.
Yeah,
thank you.
I want to hear more about the difference between transactional and reciprocity, because I'm hearing this, like, you can pay somebody money for something, but that's not necessarily what reciprocity means, right?
Yeah, and I think like what we find, people who are really like deep in the work of working in tribal areas and with Indigenous populations, is that like, giving cash can actually, and I'm no expert, so like I say, everything with a grain of salt, but giving cash does not necessarily like solve. It can actually create more problems. Where, for example, if what the community really needs is a well, like, how do you fund the well and like not put in our like us as Western minded, like, oh, the best thing that we can ask for is cash. But that's not going to help a community who's like, actually, we just need clean water, or actually, we just need like our lands. We need to like help us maintain authority over our lands. And so reciprocity is like really understanding the needs of the community and working with them in like value that is appropriate to them. And then also understanding that, again, from like the Western, we're very transactional, like get to it. What do you want? What do you need? How can I pay you? What's your time worth? That's a very different way of moving than a lot of these, like, you know, more indigenous populations. And I think that's like that in itself is one of the gifts that they give us, is like reminding us that there's another way to be human. And I would argue like a lot of our loneliness epidemic and our culture, like the mental health crisis that we're having, is because we are not moving in community, in society, in ways that are, you know, in line with nature, in line with humanity.
Yeah. A key word that jumped out to me there was value. It's an interesting thing to compare, you know, what we deem in the Western culture as a return on our value, right? Like this give and take. When you're speaking about healing and expansion of consciousness and the development of the human soul, the development of the earth tribe, like the collective consciousness, how do we put a dollar figure on the value of our own personal life experience, right? And the connectivity that we have with others and the connectivity that we have with the planet that we live on. It's not something you can put a dollar value on, but it is something where you can create a value exchange between those that you're receiving from and those that you wish to give back to. And so the word that started coming up in my mind was this like gift, the idea of the gifting culture, right? Where there's a difference between a transaction and exchanging gifts, right? If you gift me with something beautiful, like a mind or heart opening, connecting experience, which enables me to see myself and my relationship to others and my relationship to the world in a much deeper way, do I then pull out my wallet and then flash some cash across and be like, thank you for that? Or do I go, how can I give something from my journey that will also, you know, in some way return the energy that's been given across to me? And yeah, that's a beautiful thought.
You know, I think it's a really interesting, challenging dilemma. And I certainly sit with it myself. Like, I think a lot of people, myself included, who are like in this work, this is part of our gifting back, right? Like, this is like, this saved my life, like hands down. And so like my work is here to continue this forward.
Tell me more. You say this saved your life. Let's go there.
That's 100% what I was going to ask about next. I'm like, I want to hear more about your story, like your personal story, because obviously you say that quite directly, that psychedelic medicines changed your life and arguably saved it. So take us there to the beginning of sort of you meeting medicine, and how did you find it, and what did it actually ultimately do for you to quote unquote save your life? The sponsor of today's episode is Great Spirit Farm. Yes. Love having Great Spirit Farm with us, and specifically their ayahuasca microdose tincture. It is a natural MAOI antidepressant and anti-anxiety. Great Spirit Farm describes the feeling as a warm hug. It can help you access deep creativity, flow, intuition, and improve vivid dream recall, which actually has totally been my experience.
So what is exactly in the bottle is the ayahuasca vine itself. So this is a tincture extraction, double extraction tincture that contains the Banisteriopsis caapi vine. Now, the particular vine that this has been extracted from has been growing in Florida now for over 25 years. And the ayahuasca vine does not contain DMT, so that makes this tincture 100% legal in all 50 states.
Yeah, Great Spirit Farm recommends starting with 1 to 3 dropperfuls and increasing your dose gradually from there until you feel the effects. There are no known contradictions with antidepressants, and always check with your doctor and only take as directed.
And what's really great about what Great Spirit Farm is doing is they're making sure that 10% of all the sales are returned to the Shipibo tribe, honoring the medicine's indigenous roots with active reciprocity. Now, if you want to try this tincture out for yourself, you can go to the website that is ayadose.com, AYADOSE.com, and you can enter our discount code TTJ10 to get 10% off your order. Again, that's ayadose.com and all caps TTJ10 to get 10% off your order.
Well, it's sort of like I found it before I found it, right? You call her in and she shows up. It's no joke, right? Like you really,
right.
it's really, there's like the time I first met grandmother, and when I was off chasing another thread like into Costa Rica, and accidentally ended up at a retreat center that like had ayahuasca, and was like,
Wow.
oh wait, this wasn't exactly an accident. I did just ask about this last week, literally, but I didn't know at the time. I didn't know what plant medicine meant. I was like, oh, it's like Ayurveda. I'm going to go have like a healthy retreat. I'm going to eat good food and do yoga. And I showed up. I was like, oh, this is actually what I asked for. But that was like years before, or maybe like in a way like leading up to my crash. But I had a series of life events that left me pretty, like, I had severe PTSD. I was suicidal. I was very depressed. I was having a moment, and I just, by like the sheer luck, found ketamine therapy, and that was before it was a thing.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even. It's like they use this for this kind of treatment. Like I don't know. And I like found a center, couldn't get in. My mom happens to also be a therapist, and she like hit her network and found an anesthesiologist who was offering ketamine treatment. I wouldn't say therapy, I would say treatment.
Yeah.
And so I had a session with him, and on the one hand, it was horrible. Like the design was horrible. It was coming into a doctor's office on a hard metal bed, crinkly paper, like the pulse ox monitor beeping at me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Asked
God.
if I wanted to watch TV during my infusion. Like it's like
my gosh.
horrifying. And somewhere in me, I guess maybe from my like, this is just like,
Wow.
this
Sorry.
is the norm. This
I'm
is
like,
not unusual, right? This is like
oh.
horrifying. If you
Yeah.
know, this is like the
Yeah.
worst possible.
Man.
And I think probably because my time, like in the jungle years before, I had the wherewithal to like bring an eye mask and a sound bath.
Wow.
And so I like created my mini experience there despite the insanity. And I came out of there feeling like, I mean, I was really, it was like everything to get from 1 minute to the next. I mean, very, very hard time. And I felt like there was a crack in the clouds after one session. I felt like there was a crack in the clouds. And you can't say that with SSRIs. Like, it's like 6 weeks on to see if maybe you feel something. You've dealt with all the like side effects, and did it work? I don't know. I can't tell. It's so subtle. And I'm not saying like don't do SSRI. I just like, I had been on that path in life before. I know it's like could be months of trying things that maybe work, maybe don't work, to have a crack in the clouds after like one session. I mean, that's profound. And this is ketamine, not to mention like the other deeper medicines, right?
Sure. You kept going with the ketamine treatment for a series of sessions.
Yeah, I luckily then did find my way to like really phenomenal care.
Okay.
Like really, and I just feel so profoundly lucky. I had like an amazing like true ketamine therapy with like in more of a house-like setting with a therapist who with clinical experience working on the FDA trials. Like he, and so I was in that therapy for months, and it really, I mean, there were times even in the middle of all that where things I felt like I had like found I created my own board of health around me. And still had some like pretty big fumbles along the way, and felt like in all other intents and purposes, like with it enough to like stay organized or figure things out, or
it's allowed.
Okay, I forgot. That like I was like, how does everyone else do this? Like, I am a highly like functioning person, and I'm barely keeping it together. How does everyone else do this? And so it was like in my time, in my journeys and those months then, it was very clear to me, like in journey, it was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through. Like, frankly, I don't know if I want to. I was still very much in the therapeutic realm of like, like Earth, like, why choose this? Like parking tickets and taxes, like this is the best we can do as humans. Like, why choose this? But like if I make it through, then my work is here. Like, it's so clear that as a designer, I can see how broken the system is, and also whether it's like in tiny details or the complexity of it, like there's little things we could do that would have like tremendous impact.
If you're willing, I'd like to ask for you to tell us and our audience a little bit more about your crash. You mentioned that, and I know that's sometimes it can be tough to talk into the low point, but I'd like to ask to see what you're willing to share there, so we can understand a bit more about how the medicines have helped you and what you've had to work through.
I like how to talk about that. I feel like I made a series of art during that time that made like better, like it was like while I was very raw, I was like trying to work it through a little bit with that,
with art.
The art, like a series of posts on Instagram. So I was very public with it in a way, like, and I'm not usually like on Instagram being public, but I was like, I felt like I was at the deep end of a pool, or like the bottom of the ocean, like it's like where the waves are happening above you, and it was like so raw, like it felt like my skin was like I had lost a layer of skin. Like I think that's the like PTSD part. Like it's so raw that anything would. It was just like too much. Like it was all too much, and
hypersensitive.
And it was like to get between one treatment and the next, it was like all like, and those were like in the beginning just a few days apart. Like it was like, if I can make it to Wednesday, I just have to make it to Wednesday. Yeah. And my therapist described, I almost felt guilty about the ketamine. I was like, I kind of like this. Like, is this like, is that allowed? And he told me, like number one, like healing doesn't have to hurt. Like healing doesn't have to hurt. Like that was a new concept. And I really, really like that. This is one of his, like, I feel like he tries to plant this seed a lot with his patients. And I appreciate it because I hold it a lot now too. It's like, maybe it doesn't have to be hard. Maybe it doesn't have to hurt.
Yeah. And that's one of my life lessons too, is I don't have to do it the hard way.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah.
And the question of is this allowed, right? The what barriers are in our way to accessing healing options, which is also something I know you care about, this ethical application of psychedelic medicines. How can we help people access them? That's probably way down the line, but certainly connected to you then make it through. What would you say is like when you were through? And then I imagine you had some experience around, holy shitballs, I made it through this time that was so precarious, so painful, so lots of things. And it led you to, I imagine, doing what you're starting toward, right? You led the first ever class, right, at Stanford, Psychedelics and Design, correct? And so I'm like, how is this all connected to that? I mean, tell me about that.
Oh, I'm like, I don't think it like the make it through was like, if I'm on, it was sort of like I made it through that chapter.
Yep.
I was feeling better. I was not like, I need to have therapy every week or whatever, ketamine therapy. Like I was, that was getting, and then to be honest, like, I fell in love. I got pregnant.
Wonderful.
Very fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always great to fall in love, right?
Right. Yeah.
I got pregnant really fast, unexpectedly. And then got excited, like went through the like, oh my God, this was fast. We're not ready for this. We're ready for this. We're going to do this. Had a miscarriage. Had another miscarriage. And that was when I like dove in to some other like more powerful medicine. And then I got pregnant, and then I quit my job, and then we were in the pandemic. Or I quit my job, and then I got pregnant, job with benefits, all the things. Then we were in the pandemic. So it's like, you're never through it. Like, I think I'm still in it. I'm still in like the next chapter that has been like much harder than those in ways. But now I feel when the pandemic started, I felt really lucky that in a way, like I had just gone through really, really deep medicine and like really, really deep depression and all those things, because I was watching it happen around me. And I was like, well, I have tools for this now.
Awesome.
And I had access to care, which you couldn't get then, right?
Right. I'm still in it. Who isn't still in it? I just want to validate that quickly. Like, that's basically the premise of our entire show, is that Jay and I started talking to each other because we're in it. The human experience, the kind of comedy and tragedy.
I asked my therapist along the way, I was like, should I be better at this by now? And he was just like, no, you're just leveling up. Like, it just gets harder, like, oh yeah, you've passed that moment. Now it's like the harder, you're like, oh, great.
There's a bunch of spirituality memes floating around recently, and I sent one to Mel. I think you could remember it, Mel. It's like the 10 levels of awakening or something, and at first it's this kind of like, no, I'm good, I'm all fine, and it's this kind of denial state, and then there's the like, okay, well, maybe I could use a little something, and actually I'm not really good, and then we go, no, and it starts to change, and it evolves, and as it evolves, it goes to more and more awareness of how messed up everything is, and it gets harder because we actually clean out the filters that we've been so clogged that are, they're blocking out our ability to see and feel how many things are misaligned within ourselves and our relationship to our lives, those around us, the planet that we live on, the plants, the animals, the people, everything. And as we clean up those filters and start to get a cleaner view of them, and somatically in our physical bodies start to feel and relate it gets harder. Much harder, because now I'm like, oh shit, this shit's way out of whack. I thought I was good because I didn't see any of it. I had my blinders on. And now I'm super hypersensitive to it all because I can feel it, see it.
Well, and I for me, like, also the next like chapter threshold is like to become a parent is
Oh boy.
like a huge, I mean, huge. And then once you've like done your work or you're in your work or whatever, like I'm trying to be so much more conscious with my son and also know that like when people are like, oh, you know, they won't remember. And you're like, you do remember. Like if psychedelics teaches us one thing is like, we have access to all of those memories and they're formative. And so then I almost hold it like tighter, like, oh God, I know that if I like accidentally yelled at you because I lost it or whatever, that could be the moment that it sticks. Like
You're
that
right.
it just like actually hits my kiddo. And
Oh,
so like holding all of that is, you know, it's like also part of the challenge.
man.
Like I can't be a perfect mom. I want to be a perfect. I don't want, you know, I don't want to
yeah.
be perfect, but I want to like not hurt it. Like the protective, all the stuff that you know
Sure.
one day he's going to have to deal with anyway.
So challenging, especially when you start to understand how trauma works and how we, as a parent, everything that we carry goes on to the kid. Then there's no avoiding it. And if you're aware of your own problems, then you're going, great, I'm just imprinting all this on them, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. And I'll try to do my best job not to, but sorry for screwing you up, kid. You know?
Yeah. And I'm like the moments where I like feel I'm like, oh, there's my dad. Like I feel like I don't know how to react right now except to like yell because I'm losing it. I'm like, oh, I feel you coming through right now. Like, shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell us more about your work because we do want to hear about that. You know, like what was the path to then leaning in to psychedelics and design? How did that come about? You teaching at Stanford and then follow on with what you're doing now with the School of Psychedelic Design that you founded.
Yeah, thanks. You know, it's like a long time coming. I think for many years I've been like working in the design and innovation space, and I was like over in one pocket of my professional life. And then, you know, every weekend was going to retreat and going to learn from, you know, I was like Byron Katie and like whoever the latest, right? And so I've always been a seeker. I've always been like a deep yogi, working with Reiki, working with energy, meditation, and like for a long time had this question was like, how do these come together? Like, how do I bring the spirituality and the innovation and like be a bridge? And I had been like knocking on that door for a while, trying a few things, was working on like a tarot by design deck idea, doing some teaching where we were like starting to blend a little bit of the design and a little bit of the spirituality. People were uncomfortable with it at the time. And I, or,
yeah.
huh? Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I know. Thumbs
But
up.
I was sort of like, I still felt like I was a bridge. Like I feel like I have this unique way to like hold both of these and talk to each, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, the masculine, the feminine, it's like all of the ways of being creative, from sort of like the emergent and the artist and the intuitive, and also the ways of being creative with more of a like directive process. But so the psychedelic, for me, like after coming out of that journey, what I'd been holding for a while was this question was like, what's the role of design in psychedelic medicine? I was just sitting with that for a while, and I felt like like I'm a designer, like there's clearly a role, like clearly design can be like anywhere in this ecosystem and be helpful, but like what are the real linchpins in the system? Like, and that was the question. I started talking to a bunch of people, like trying to understand like where do I think this would be most effective? And then Stanford, the design school there, you know, was new to psychedelics in a way. We'll come back to that later. But like was not new to design in emergent spaces. And so I had also been teaching a class called Forbidden Design with a colleague. And the topic there was the first topics were around like cannabis
Okay.
and EVs and death and marriage. And so these topics that feel forbidden, like even marriage, like how do we redesign marriage? Like,
Yeah, I gotcha.
And so I felt like, okay, this is my Trojan horse. Like, if we're talking about cannabis, like, and we're talking about emergent industry, we're talking about like, and the design school, like, you know, is at the forefront of like, we're designing for spaces that don't exist yet, and they understand that. And so I for me, I was like, well, psychedelic medicine, like design for like this is next. And I just very luckily, like, right person, right time over. And I have been teaching at the Stanford for 15 years. So like I've gone the gauntlet of trying to launch new classes and try new prototypes there. And so it, you know, it's not I feel like it's climbing Mount Everest, like to get a course number. And I had the right partner over there who understood. Thank you, Seamus Hart. Seamus. Who like gets it and sees, you know, like he is both working on emergent curriculum there, but also understands like we should be playing this space and sort of the potential, and help me navigate some of the academic nerves around it.
Sure.
And so launched at every new class at Stanford has to have a prototype. And so we did a prototype evening, and it had the highest attendance of any of their like prototype events. So that proved
Congratulations.
Interest. Yeah, that was, and we've had just like amazing, everyone in the industry who I've invited to speak has come. I mean, we've had like Brian Marescu, David Yaden, East Forest, Trish Eastman, Joseph Barsulia, like Bennett Zelder, like the list can continue. And that's like so beautiful that, you know, all of these like deep experts in the space are excited because this is a different approach.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, earlier in the conversation, you were speaking about the greatest compliment that you could receive in art and in design there. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this as far as like designing for the psychedelic experience. For me, from my journey, has been through music. I've been DJing for 25 years, and a big piece of what electronic music and the somatic in-body expression, emotion, embodiment, the allowing of that energy to pass through, and like allowing dance to occur, and in the individual, in the deep inside of myself, like dance like nobody's watching, completely losing everything else that's around me and being in the music, and also being with everybody else around me and being deeply connected to community in that like tribal expression and release of rhythmic trance state dancing, which is so through our history as humans. This goes back to the beginning of time, you know? And so in my early experiences with these types of experiences, it came to me through psychedelics. It was mushrooms and MDMA and LSD at the time were the molecules that opened me up to allowing these to occur. Otherwise, I was closed. Like this book was closed. That was not something that was allowed or I felt okay with. Like you said earlier, am I allowed to be happy? Am I allowed to feel okay? Is it okay that I like this? I was not okay with people dancing around like a bunch of idiots. You know, I'm like, I had a lot of judgment around that. And what I've come to realize through my own healing journey with these deep experiences is the greatest compliment that I can receive as an artist is when somebody is brought to tears. And I can think of each and every time where a person has come to me after a set, after a performance, after a party, and said, "You made me cry. You made me cry." And I'm like, on the dance floor, tears coming down the face. And I'm like, should we be So this is like, am I allowed to cry on the dance floor? Like, the dance floor is for celebrating, right? Isn't it supposed to be a, air quotes, party? Is this a part? Why am I crying at the party? Why am I emoting this stuck energy that's been trapped inside? And how did I even get to a place where I'm so emotionally overwhelmed that tears are flowing down my face at a time when we're supposed to be, quotes, celebrating? So tell me more about where this is touching your heart, because I can see it on your face that you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I totally do. And actually, the first thought I had is like, I feel like I've come along enough on my journey that I'm a crier. Like, I'm comfortable crying. I'll cry anywhere. Like, but like in those moments, also be on the dance floor crying, and like, I almost have to also take care of the people around me, depending on who and where. Like, no, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay. Let me do this. Like, don't try and fix it. Don't just like, I'm okay. I'm doing my thing, but like, I think that, there's experience that's like, you have to be comfortable with that, and you have to, like, whether it's through I, as a dancer, I used to hate ecstatic dance. I was so uncomfortable.
Oh, I understand.
I understand. I mean, for multiple reasons. And one was like, I definitely move emotion while I'm dancing, like 100%. And it is a deep form of therapy for me. But I also was a trained dancer. So like, I needed the moves to feel comfortable for a really long time. So I started going to ecstatic and made myself uncomfortable for a long time, until I finally like let go and realized nobody's paying attention.
Yeah.
And then was surprised myself that I was having like emotional response, like crying on the dance floor, there without anything else except like the pure state of just like movement and music and the energy of the people around me. So I guess the other thought I had when you were saying that was, I don't know if you've read I Feel Love by Shayla.
That's not.
Her last
No,
name. It's
I
a
haven't
great
either.
book. It's worth reading. It's about like
We'll put it in the show
MDMA.
notes.
And it's a really easy read, and it gives the great history of the movement and everything from like historic to political to well worth to read. One of the things that she brings up is this like tribal, like us as humans, we've had these initiatory tribal trance-like experiences that are no longer really in our culture, but for what is the trance dance? What do they call it in the 80s, 90s? When, like, they were doing all the MDMA like underground
like
shows.
a
Rave, thank you.
Yeah.
I never went to one, so I'm like late in the journey around all this, which but that raves are sort of like Western, like response to like still having a craving for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the like questions and challenges around psychedelics as they come into context and culture today. It's like they're not new, but like we don't have those initiatory experiences to hold them. And
the containers for them.
Yeah. And
what will the
like,
containers look like now?
Yeah. For some people, like dance is great and amazing, and being in community, we need it. And for some people, it's like that, especially if you're like you're in deep trauma, like that's not necessarily going to be a safe place to start.
Right. It makes me think of the concept that the medicine is always different. Like you talk about, okay, I went to ecstatic dance and I was uncomfortable and I kept going and I, kind of challenged myself through that discomfort. And I mean, that's how I describe early experiences with ayahuasca for me, where it was like I felt like she was just with a pickaxe, sort of like over time, over multiple ceremonies, kind of helping me with that really, really hard shell that I had around my very soft, sensitive, loving center. And, I talk about crying rivers and rivers of sadness, like that came out, that was held in there. And one of the other things that I feel like I want to just reflect back, which I feel like I hear in your story, Elysa, and tell me if this doesn't land for you, but I think you're a beautiful example of somebody creating in the world, somebody having professional success and being engaged in that way while having real and true and serious human challenges, how both can coexist, right? Like how it doesn't have to be that we're all fucked up and we're flailing in the world and we're successful, or, or we're successful. It can be both, like that the whole, like, we can be screwed up and a work in progress and a masterpiece all at the same time. I feel like that's very evident in your sharing today, which I think is such a really critical and beautiful share for anyone listening who thinks they have to be one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, I laugh when people like tell me I'm doing a good job right now, because it's like when it's like as a, like single parent, like it's hard,
Right.
And they're like, you're doing such a great job, and I'm like, you have no idea how many balls are being dropped right now.
Right.
Like, like there are a couple things that like you just like, you got one thing in the air, the other something's dropped. It's like, it's the old, and it's so true, and it's hard.
Yeah. And I think it's so brave and it's a true contribution to be seen for that. You know what I mean? Like, you're showing up in this very public space and acknowledging the reality of your human experience, which to me, I believe quite deeply that is probably the highest contribution we can make, is to be actually truly seen and allowing the container to almost emerge and hold us, right? Like, obviously this is a safe, intimate container here, the three of us, but it's also kind of an interesting exercise and chosen experience to let ourselves be seen more widely and see what that brings to our existence and what contribution we make as a result of it. So I just want to acknowledge you for that, because I think it's important and I'm grateful for it.
Well, thank you. Like, I see in you what I can't pull up the epithet right now. Takes one to know one.
Takes one to know one. Totally. Oh my God. Oh, what's percolating for you, Jason?
I'm curious a little bit more to understand what you're teaching. I wanted to kind of go back to the psychedelic medicine and design, because I have my own ideas around this from my own personal life journey of it's been a solid 20 plus years of my versions of attempting to create spaces and experiences for people to have their own experience in, and seeing the change in myself. Especially, it feels very cyclical. It feels like there's been these generations or chapters of understanding kind of the value and how do I want to phrase this, kind of the context of the space, which is, at first for me, was very different than it became in the next chapter, and very different again in the next chapter. And right now it's evolving very dramatically. And I'll just share an example. Is I've hosted many parties and mini festivals, and the evolution of those over time has gone from kind of more just loose to more and more honed towards very specific goals, very, very curated experiences to really hold boundaries for what is the container designed for. So I have my ideas in there, but expound upon these concepts.
So let me, I guess, take a step back. When, like, design, as I think about it in this space, is everything from the like tiniest touch points on a patient journey, like how do I find my therapist? I think like even just that as a moment, finding the right therapist is like dating, right? Like
Yep.
when you're already in drama. So
Oh,
like
yeah.
patient
Oh, yeah.
experience, every touch point along that journey, all the way you can design for that. You can also design for systems. So as we think about like accessibility, reciprocity, like how does the clinic work within insurance, work within my community center, work within, so like design could be anything on that spectrum. And the students, the courses at the design school have a foundation of design thinking, which is like a human-centered design process, which basically means first you talk to people, you understand what they need, and you use that to inspire what kinds of solutions you come up with. So it's not just like I'm going into my studio and I'm going to imagine like what's necessary. It's like, no, I go talk to people. That's critical. And it's a simple thing a lot of people don't do. So the students are coming from across campus, and they're law students, med students, engineers, educators, sort of all ages, undergrad, grad, fellows. And so they're learning this like at a fundamental level, like what is design thinking? It's a creative problem solving process. What is the process? How do we apply it to challenges? And the challenges that they're applying it to are ones in the psychedelic ecosystem.
Got
And
it.
so they're getting like a foundational course in like what is the ecosystem. So we have like a day on like what is happening in the legal policy world, what is like happening in like what does clinical design, like trial design, look like. We have someone come in who brings like some indigenous perspective. We have people come in who bring like we're looking at new business design. So it's just sort of like a touch of the ecosystem, like what's happening, where could I play?
Very
I
high
think
level.
at the
Yep.
high level, students have different, they either come in with a little bit of psychedelic knowledge, experience, maybe in the med school, maybe not, or a little bit of design experience, maybe. And so really I think about like in terms of the students coming out of Stanford, they are either like curious about psychedelics and beyond like the medical system. And so they're like, what else can I learn? What's another perspective? How might I design in the ecosystem? Or maybe they're like, I really want to take a design class. I want to learn about this design innovation process, and this topic seems interesting. So some of them may graduate to become, I think of them, some of them at least, as like the first wave of designers who are intentionally creating in this space. And then in my at the School of Psychedelic Design, which is not affiliated with Stanford, this is public course offerings. So bringing a lot of this content from outside of Stanford and building it for the ecosystem. And so like right now I have a course designed for facilitators that is more specifically around experience design, which sounds a little bit more like you were talking about, Jason.
Yeah.
And then I also recently taught a course that was more like looking at ecosystem builders, so people who are looking to like design new businesses, or folks who want to play in the psychedelic sphere, but who are maybe not going to be practitioners, who understand like there's still room for me. Where can I play? Like, what can I do? Like it's going to take a movement.
I love that. There's room for me. You know what I mean? Because I talk about that a lot. I know I've shared this with you, like where I sit in the psychedelic space is I often say, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a facilitator. What am I? I'm a person with a voice, with a platform, and I can tell my story and see how that makes a positive impact, how that motivates others to share their stories. And I feel quite good about that as it's aligned with myself and how I can currently contribute to this movement, this space that I care so deeply about for my own personal reasons. Yeah.
Awesome. Elysa, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to share anything that we haven't touched on before we bring this episode to a close.
Thanks.
I want to know everything. in the last 4 minutes.
Is there anything we haven't?
Every single thing.
Is there anything yeah.
No, I mean, I think one, I would just say that for anyone interested, we're launching this first course targeted or specifically designed with facilitators in mind.
Okay.
It launches in February, and it'll be an intimate cohort. We have amazing guests. So I want to invite anyone who is curious about that. I guess I would also ask you all, do you feel like you understand yet what I mean by design?
I do.
Yeah, I feel like I do. I feel like I would need your course, you know what I mean, to really dig into it. But I think what I understand it as is considering all the different facets of whatever it is you are looking to create, and being really thoughtful and considerate around and almost detail oriented, but also fluid with the looking at all of those things. That's sort of how I'm understanding it. Is that
I think that's
one
fair.
of the ways? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Awesome. Where can our audience find out more about these courses, about you? Where can people reach you?
Easiest place to find me is psychedelicdesign.school, or you can follow us on Instagram at the School of Psychedelic Design, where we're going to be sharing more inspirational tools and just provocations and fun design things to look at.
Awesome.
Yeah, Elysa, thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much. I love you. I'm so grateful we are in each other's lives.
Ditto.
I know that our future is rich in other actual in-person experiences, even though we don't know when the next one will be.
Yeah, but it's coming. We're planting the seed now.
It's coming. Exactly. But really, thank you for being here. Thank you for all your sharing. Thank you for all you're doing in the space to contribute in your own way as well. Truly.
Thanks for helping us get the word out there, because that's not my forte, and it's important. It's really important that people understand. I mean, this is life, has the potential to be life-saving. So
yeah,
let's help
100%
people.
agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We really loved having you on the show today.
Thank you. Take care.